Welcome to a session on Introduction to Supply Chain Management. I am Dr. Ambeesh Mon S, Assistant Professor, Institute of Management in Kerala, Department of Management Studies, University of Kerala. Supply chain is like nature. It is present all around us. This is a famous saying from a well-known management thinker and professional, Tom Waters. So nowadays we frequently hear the word supply chain, and it is playing an important role in fulfilling almost all of our daily requirement with respect to various goods and services. So in this session, let's understand what a supply chain is, what is supply chain management, what are the various supply chain strategies adopted by the organization, as well as the triggers or drivers that has a say on the performance of the supply chain. So what is a supply chain? Think of a product, for example, a toilet soap. From where you are actually getting the product and from where the product originate. Let's examine. Definitely you buy a toilet soap normally from a retailer near to you. It can be a petty retail shop or a supermarket or maybe another form of organized store. So generally we can call him a retailer. The retailer is getting the toilet soap from a wholesaler who receive it from the manufacturer through a transporter. And the manufacturer, he makes the product by undertaking a process in which he utilizes the various resources that are being supplied by, or the raw materials that are being supplied by a set of suppliers. So we can understand the supply chain like this. There is a set of suppliers, then there is a manufacturer, transporter, wholesaler, retailer, and finally the customer. Now let's take another product, a passenger car. Here also you can see a number of suppliers who give parts and components to the manufacturer who assemble the product in his plant. Then it is taken to a dealer through a transporter, and the customer sources the car from the dealer. So two different products, you can see the role of two different type of supply chains. So we can conclude that different products are having different supply chain. Now let's examine whether there can be a different supply chain for the same product. You take the case of a shirt, for example, a branded apparel, an Allen Solly shirt. Normally we can get an Allen Solly shirt from a traditional textile store like maybe Kalyan or Shimati or Jayalakshmi. You can get that shirt. So apart from this traditional organized retail store, you can get Allen Solly from the exclusive stores run by the company. Also, if you want, you can get it from the online store of the company. That means same product can have different supply chain. Now, another interesting as well as important question. Is it like a chain? A chain means there has to be a one-to-one relationship. But here, as we have already explained, in a supply chain there can be a number of suppliers, maybe one manufacturer, a number of transporters, thousands of wholesalers, lakhs of retailers, and maybe crores of customers. So actually it is like a web, not a chain, but we are using the term supply chain. Now let's see what is a supply chain management. For that we need to understand the flows in a supply chain. What all flow in a supply chain? The very first one is the product. Product, it can be good or service or a combination. So the product flow is normally from top to bottom. That is from the supplier to the customer through the manufacturer and the other intermediaries. That is product flow. Top to bottom in a supply chain, it is getting exchanged. And when a customer receives a product, definitely he is paying the money. So money is the second element that flows in a supply chain, and money flow, as we normally understand, it is from bottom to top. And also we need to understand that customer is the one and only one entity who feeds money into a supply chain. All other parties take their share out of the money that is being paid by the customer. And the third and most important flow, that is information. And information flow is in both directions. Sometimes it flow upwards, sometimes it flow downwards. It can be in either direction at the same time. And it is the flow of information that actually regulate the flow of money and product in the supply chain. So we can understand supply chain management as the art of managing the flow of product, money and information among the supply chain partners, that is right from the supplier to the customer. And nowadays this particular topic is getting a lot of attention because organizations realize that the value addition in the process can be done by managing the supply chains in a meticulous manner. Also, it is relevant to examine the difference between logistics and supply chain. Earlier, maybe the much popular term was logistics. Now it got almost replaced by a broader, better term called supply chain. Logistics management is having a relatively narrow focus compared to supply chain, because logistics mainly focuses on the storage and transportation of the product, whereas supply chain management encompasses all the stages like sourcing, procurement, value addition, storage and transportation throughout the chain, that is right from the supplier to the customer. So we can understand that supply chain is a broader term that encompasses the activities come under logistics also. So that is the difference between logistics and supply chain management. Now another important question: what is the objective of supply chain management? The objective of supply chain management is to maximize the supply chain surplus. The supply chain surplus is the overall value of the supply chain minus the total cost incurred. So what exactly is the value that you generate for the customer, and at what cost? The difference between these two is supply chain surplus. And in supply chain management, what we try to attain is increasing this supply chain surplus. Now, what are the decision phases in a supply chain? While crafting a supply chain, first we need to have a supply chain strategy. The supply chain strategy is with respect to the design of the supply chain, and it is a long-term decision. Maybe for the next several years, what is the supply chain that you are going to have? In what way you are going to run that supply chain? That is known as supply chain strategy or supply chain design. Then comes the interim decision related to the functioning of the supply chain. It is a medium-term decision. Definitely it is taken in line with the overall long-term strategy, and it can be termed as supply chain planning. And your activities in a supply chain in short term, maybe a week or a month, that can be termed as supply chain operation. So the decision phases in a supply chain can be understood in terms of the supply chain strategy or design, supply chain planning, and supply chain operation. Then regarding the supply chain management, the organization can have two options that lie at two extremes. One is an efficient supply chain, other one is a responsive supply chain. What is an efficient supply chain? An efficient supply chain focuses on the maximum utilization of the available inputs and the process so that you can keep the cost of operation at minimum. Whereas a responsive supply chain try to have better performance in terms of speed, quality, customer service, etc., definitely at a higher cost. We can understand it in terms of some simple examples. Take the case of our public distribution system. The PDS is intended to cater to the needs of crores of people. And many a time they are getting some grains free of cost or at a very nominal cost. So here the authorities try to keep the cost minimum. We are not looking at a superior customer service at a higher speed. The very intention is to keep the cost minimum, so it can be considered as an example for an efficient supply chain. Whereas you look at the supply chain of a high-end retailer like maybe Reliance Fresh. Suppose a customer is buying apple from Reliance Fresh, Shimla apple. So the company is cultivating apple through contract farming by keeping an eye on the quality level of the product. They pluck it at the right time. They carefully segregate the product, physically examine the product, pack it, transport it in cold storage facilities. Again, at the point of selling, there is an examination on the overall quality of the product. Then it is meticulously displayed in their shelves, and the customer is willing to pay maybe for rupees 400 for 1 kilogram of apple. So here you can see the company is not focusing on cost minimization. They are spending money in their attempt to provide a quality product to the customer. So that can be considered as a typical example for a responsive supply chain. You take another example, India Post. Suppose I want to send a letter to a friend in Delhi. I am sending it in ordinary post. What I need to affix is 5 rupees stamp for a minimum weight envelope to reach Delhi from Trivandrum. That is an efficient supply chain. The organization resort to the use of India Post, resort to the use of the slowest mode of transportation. Their aim is to minimize the cost because I am paying only 5 rupees to send the envelope. So that is an efficient supply chain. Maybe the same envelope I can send to the same person in Delhi in speed post, where I need to spend around 40 rupees. So there is a better, faster mode of transportation. I get real-time updations on the status of the envelope, right from its booking to delivery. India Post is collecting information, sharing it with me, of course at a higher cost. That can be considered as an example for a responsive supply chain. So that can be termed as an efficiency responsiveness frontier. The organization can put their operation anywhere in the frontier. So some organizations are more towards establishing a responsive supply chain, whereas some other organizations on the other hand go for an efficient supply chain. So it is for you to decide, depending on your overall business strategy, what needs to be your supply chain strategy, whether you are more towards efficiency or you are more towards responsiveness. Now Another question, what are the drivers of supply chain performance? There are four major drivers of supply chain performance. They are facility, inventory, transportation, and information. So when we say facility, we need to consider two types of facilities. One is the production facility or your manufacturing facility. Other one is your storage facility or warehousing. So an organization that believe in responsiveness need to have more facilities. They need to set up more manufacturing facility as well as more warehouses. They need to spend more on the facilities so that it is state of art. It fulfills the requirements of the customer in a meticulous manner. So if you are ready to spend more on your facility, definitely yours can be a responsive supply chain. Whereas an organization that want to keep the cost minimum, that try to practice the efficiency strategy, try to operate with minimal facilities, both manufacturing as well as warehousing. Many developments are happening with respect to the facility decision in a supply chain. For example, nowadays we are having highly automated warehousing facilities. The state-of-art warehouse management systems are in place by companies who try to practice responsiveness to a greater extent. The second driver of supply chain performance is inventory. Inventory can be raw material, semi-finished good or finished good. So your inventory decisions, especially purchase and stores, can be a driver of your supply chain performance. As we are aware with respect to a purchase, we need to take three decisions. One, what is the quantity of purchase? Two, what is the period of purchase? And three, who will make purchase? The quantity of purchase can be decided with models like economic order quantity, how much to buy, the Q decision. The period of purchase can be termed as P decision. And finally, who will make purchase? It can be centralized purchase or decentralized purchase, and almost all organizations at present make use of a combination. So it's a combination of centralized as well as decentralized purchasing. The second aspect of inventory is stores. So your storage mechanism, storage systems and practices. And also whether you are having a centralized store or a decentralized store. That is also an important dimension of your inventory decision. Here again, an organization that prefer responsiveness need to have more inventory. They need to keep a variety of inventory to fulfill the requirements of different category of customers. Whereas organizations that try to keep the cost minimum focus on a limited variety because their overall objective is to reduce cost. So in terms of the second driver of supply chain performance, inventory, with respect to that also your supply chain strategy like responsiveness and efficiency varies. The third driver of supply chain performance is transportation. We know there are different modes of transportation like surface, air, water and pipeline. When we say surface, it can again be divided into two, a road and rail. So among the available option, the speedier one, definitely at a higher cost, is air transportation. So companies that don't responsiveness as their supply chain strategy resort to the speedier mode of transportation. Whereas an organization that basically adhere to efficiency as their supply chain strategy, resort to a cheaper form of transportation, definitely which are slower. For example, we know water transportation is the cheapest. At the same time, it is the less speedier option available with respect to transportation. And it is interesting to note that in modern days, at present time, organizations go for intermodal transportation. They combine the different modes to transport the same product. For example, from the journey to the company to customer, from manufacturer to customer, some distance the product is taken via road. Then it may be the truck may be loaded in a rail. And again, the product, some distance it travel through water, for example. So it is known as intermodal transportation, which is widely being used by companies across the globe. The last and maybe the most important driver of supply chain performance is information. It is actually information that acts as a trigger to the other three drivers like facility, inventory, and transportation. And it is interesting to note that the extensive use of information and information technology or information management system, it is making the supply chain efficient as well as responsive at the same time. Contrary to the dilemma you have with respect to efficiency and responsiveness while designing the other drivers, facility, inventory, and transportation. So information acts as a trigger to both efficiency and responsiveness at the same time. And modern day organizations are very much concerned regarding the proper management of the four drivers of supply chain. Also, it is relevant to have idea on some popular practices in supply chain management in the present time. One term is reverse logistics. What is reverse logistics? Already we have seen normally a product flow is from supplier to customer. What if you are getting a defective product? What if you are not happy with the performance of the product? Yes, there may be options for you to send back the item to the manufacturer. In certain countries, some defective products need to be recycled by the manufacturer himself. In that case also, the product is flowing back or going back in the supply chain. That is known as reverse logistics. Another term is disintermediation. What happens in disintermediation? The supply chain can remove certain intermediaries who are not adding any value to customer. For example, you are buying an apparel online. You are buying a television online. That means there are not the conventional intermediaries like a dealer or a retailer in the process. You buy it directly from the company, where you can see that some intermediaries are eliminated. This is known as disintermediation. So this disintermediation helps companies to reduce the final price to benefit the customer, or it can help the company to reduce the cost, which will in turn help them to increase their profit margin. Another concept is green supply chain, which resort to the green practices, eco-friendly systems and practices in line with the hues and cries to favor or to protect the Mother Earth. So there are many organizations that resort to green products, green practices in all their supply chain activities, and it can be termed as green supply chain management. Supply chain systems and practices are experiencing some major or remarkable changes across the globe, and India is not an exception to that. The government of India is having certain ambitious projects that are capable of redefining the supply chain systems and practices in the country in line with the global standards. So please, you can have a look at the details of projects like Sagarmala, Bharatmala, initiated by the government of India, huge projects that are intended to improve the supply chain systems and practices in the country. Another meticulous example is the inland waterway transportation system in Kerala. The work is under progress, and once it is completed, there can be some remarkable improvements in the supply chain management systems and practices in our state also. So dear friends, in this video we have seen what supply chain is, what is supply chain management, the objective of supply chain management, the efficiency, responsiveness frontier in supply chain, the drivers of supply chain performance, and some recent developments in supply chain systems and practices globally as well as in our country. For further reference, you may resort to some excellent textbooks that are available on supply chain management. There are many fabulous materials in the online platform. Make use of that. It is all interesting as well as promising to build your career in the field supply chain management, because this area offers a number of opportunities and new things are happening. So please keep yourself updated. Wish you very best. Thank you.